The music thumped through the grand hall, chandeliers dripping crystal light across hundreds of guests dressed in shimmering designer gowns and polished tuxedos. Waiters glided between the crowd like whispers, balancing trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. And me? I stood near the massive entrance, my heart pounding so loudly I could hardly hear the music. The dress I wore, soft lilac, faded at the hem, clung awkwardly to my frame. It wasn't even a real designer knockoff. It was a clearance find at a small outlet 2 towns over, a desperate last-minute choice because every dollar I had was needed for rent and groceries, not luxury. I shouldn't have come. But this was my little sister's wedding, her big day, and despite everything, I wanted to be there. I smoothed down the wrinkled fabric nervously, trying to smile as people's gazes slid past me like I was invisible. And then, the words hit me like a slap. "You're a disgrace to this family. A complete failure." The voice, sharp and cold, sliced through the laughter and conversation like a blade. Heads turned. Conversations froze. A slow, uncomfortable silence spread across the room like an oil spill. I turned to face my stepmother, Darlene. Her manicured hand gestured at me with open disgust, sparkling diamond bracelets jingling on her wrist. "Couldn't even bother to dress decently for your own sister's wedding?" she sneered, her voice dripping with mock pity. "My God, look at her, everyone. She's wearing a cheap dress to this." The guests, relatives, business partners, old neighbors, chuckled uncomfortably, some nudging each other, exchanging amused glances. My father, standing rigidly beside Darlene in his tailored Armani suit, didn't defend me. He didn't even blink. Instead, he nodded grimly and muttered, "Should have known. She's always been an embarrassment." The ground under my heels felt like it was tilting. My hands curled into fists at my sides, nails digging into my palms to stop the tears from rising. "Not here. Not now." I forced a tight, almost brittle smile and took a step back, away from their circle of judgment. The clinking glasses, the bouquet toss, the laughter, it all blurred together in a dizzying whirl. I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood. I turned, ready to leave, ready to disappear, when the double doors burst open behind me with a bang that startled everyone into silence. A sharp gust of night air swept into the hall, rippling dresses and extinguishing a few candles. Every single head turned toward the entrance. The music died, and standing there, illuminated by the golden chandelier lights, was a man. Tall, dark-haired, in a crisp navy suit that looked tailor-made to perfection. Sharp jawline, piercing eyes that scanned the room with the focus of someone used to being obeyed. And when his gaze landed on me, everything changed. He moved toward me, cutting through the crowd like a knife through butter. People instinctively moved aside, without even realizing it. I stood frozen, my breath caught somewhere between shock and confusion. He stopped directly in front of me. The entire room held its breath. Then, slowly, he smiled, a smile that could have melted glaciers, and without a second of hesitation, he reached out and took my hand in his. "There you are," he said, his voice low and warm, like velvet laced with steel. "I've been looking everywhere for you." Gasps echoed around the hall. My stepmother's face paled. My father's mouth dropped open slightly, confusion etched into his features. The man turned toward the stunned audience, his arm slipping casually but firmly around my waist. "For those of you who don't know," he said calmly, his voice carrying easily across the stunned silence, "this remarkable woman is the co-founder of the charity that has changed thousands of lives, including mine. And starting today, she's also the newest major shareholder in my company." More gasps. Someone dropped a champagne glass. It shattered on the marble floor with a delicate, almost poetic crash. I blinked, dizzy. What is happening? The man turned back to me, his smile softening. "I thought today would be the perfect day to surprise you," he said, pulling out a small, velvet box from his jacket pocket. Not a ring, but a key. A golden key, encrusted with tiny diamonds. "To your new home. To your new life." The crowd was utterly silent. And somewhere in the frozen crowd, My stepmother, the woman who had humiliated me without blinking, swayed slightly, gripping my father's arm for balance. She had no idea this man was the secret billionaire everyone in town gossiped about. The one whose donations funded hospitals, schools, community centers, and whose face was never publicly shown. She had just humiliated someone he had been watching and cherishing for a long time. The world around me seemed to slow, as if the very air had thickened. I could feel every stunned pair of eyes drilling into my back, every dropped jaw, every tremor of whispered shock snaking through the crowd. The billionaire, my billionaire, though I still couldn't fully grasp it, gently squeezed my hand. And somehow, that touch grounded me. I swallowed hard and lifted my chin, feeling an unexpected strength ripple through me. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one shrinking back. From the corner of my eye, I saw Darlene, my stepmother, clawing at her necklace like it was suddenly strangling her. My father stood rigid, blinking rapidly, as if trying to reboot his reality. The billionaire turned toward them, toward all of them, and gave a small, polite nod. "I believe," he said smoothly, his voice filled with something that wasn't anger, but something even sharper. "Power controlled by kindness. There's been a misunderstanding tonight." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The weight of his words crashed through the room like a silent tidal wave. "You see," he continued, his arm never leaving my waist, "you judged someone without knowing her worth, without even trying to." Several guests shifted uncomfortably. A few of them, the ones who had laughed earlier, suddenly found the floor very fascinating. My father opened his mouth, closed it. He tried again. We didn't mean." His voice cracked like dry wood under pressure. The billionaire simply smiled, utterly unfazed. "It's easy to laugh at someone when you don't see the battles they've fought in silence," he said, now scanning the whole room, his voice rich with quiet conviction. "Easier to mock from the balcony than to climb into the arena yourself." I could see my sister, the bride, standing near the champagne fountain, her mouth slightly ajar, bouquet drooping in her hand. Nobody knew what to say. Nobody dared to laugh now. The billionaire turned to me again, his expression softening like sunrise after a storm. "Come on," he whispered. "Let's go somewhere where you're celebrated, not tolerated." And just like that, he led me, gently but firmly, through the still-parted crowd toward the doors. We hadn't even made it halfway across the floor when Darlene stumbled forward, desperate now, her voice a brittle screech under the shimmering chandeliers. "Wait. Please, we didn't mean it. She's family." Her fake smile trembled at the corners, cracking like old porcelain. "Stay. You belong with us." The audacity, the sudden whiplash of fake affection. I felt something cold and final click inside me, like a door I had been too afraid to close for years finally shutting, quietly but permanently. I turned slightly, just enough for her to see my face, calm, unshaken. "Thank you," I said softly. "But I think I finally understand." I let the sentence hang there, unfinished, a soft, cutting finality in the air. Family isn't where you're tolerated. It's where you're loved. Then I turned back and walked out of the hall, my hand steady in the billionaire's warm grasp. Behind me, the heavy golden doors swung closed with a muted boom that felt like punctuation on a chapter one would never reread. Outside, the cool night air kissed my face. Stars shimmered overhead like scattered diamonds across velvet. The billionaire led me to a sleek, black Rolls-Royce parked right at the entrance, its presence understated, yet impossibly luxurious. He opened the door for me like a gentleman from another world. As I slid inside, the leather seat cradled me in a way no house, no family gathering ever had. When he got in beside me, he didn't start the engine right away. Instead, he turned toward me, his eyes soft but serious. "You never needed them to tell you your worth," he said. "You were brilliant all along. You just needed someone who saw it too." And for the first time in what felt like forever, my throat tightened not from shame or anger, but from gratitude. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice breaking just slightly. He smiled, a smile that melted every leftover shard of hurt inside me. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your success, he said. Least of all those who only knew how to measure it by designer dresses and hollow applause. He leaned back, finally starting the car. As the engine purred softly, he reached over and squeezed my hand once more. From now on, you walk into every room knowing exactly who you are, he said, voice low and fierce. And trust me, they'll be the ones scrambling to keep up with you. The city lights blurred into rivers of gold outside the windows as we drove into the future, one where I was no longer the family's invisible shame. I was finally unstoppable. The car glided through the city, passing glowing skyscrapers and sleepy cafes. I leaned my head against the window, watching the streets blur past, my heart still racing. For so long, I had convinced myself that kindness meant staying quiet, that loving my family meant accepting their cruelty. But tonight proved something different. Where are we going? I asked quietly. The billionaire, his name was Ethan, smiled without taking his eyes off the road. Somewhere that feels like home, he said. You'll see. 20 minutes later, we pulled into a quiet, gated property. Towering trees lined the driveway, and at the end stood a beautiful house, elegant, warm, with golden lights spilling from the windows. This is yours, Ethan said as he parked. I stared at him, confused. What do you mean? I can't. You earned it, he interrupted gently. Everything you've done for others, everything you fought through, it's time you had something that's truly yours. He wasn't trying to rescue me. He wasn't pitying me. He was recognizing me. We stepped inside the house. The living room smelled faintly of fresh flowers. Soft rugs, tall bookshelves, cozy armchairs. It felt nothing like the cold mansions my stepmother adored. It felt alive. It felt safe. Take your time, Ethan said. You're home now. I wandered through the house, touching the soft fabrics, the polished wood. Tears blurred my vision, but this time they weren't from humiliation. I was finally standing somewhere I belonged. That night, as I lay in the softest bed I'd ever felt, Ethan sent a short message to my phone. Proud of you. Always will be. I clutched the phone to my chest and smiled through the tears. For once, my story wasn't about proving myself to people who refused to see me. It was about finally seeing myself. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the windows, warm and golden. I sat at the small kitchen table, sipping coffee from a handmade ceramic mug. The world felt quieter today, not empty, but peaceful.
My phone buzzed again.
A message from Ethan. There's something happening today you might want to see. Wear something you love. Curious, I opened the closet he'd stocked for me. Simple, elegant clothes that actually felt like me, not like a desperate imitation of someone else. I chose a soft cream dress, light and flowing, and slipped into a pair of comfortable heels. When the car pulled up outside, it wasn't just Ethan inside. It was his personal assistant too, holding a neat portfolio. Ready? Ethan asked, flashing that easy, grounding smile. For what? I laughed nervously. For your new chapter, he said simply. We drove downtown and pulled up in front of a building I'd seen 100 times before, an old community center my stepmother had once sneered at for being full of charity cases. Banners were strung across the entrance today. Grand reopening, under new ownership. My heart hammered as Ethan guided me through the doors. Inside, news cameras flashed. Local reporters whispered excitedly. And standing in the middle of it all was a polished plaque mounted on the wall. It read, dedicated to my name, for her unseen battles, her quiet victories, and her endless kindness. The room spun for a second. I grabbed Ethan's arm to steady myself. You did this. I whispered. No, he said quietly. You did. I just made sure the world finally saw it. The mayor shook my hand. Kids from the local shelters beamed at me. Volunteers, real, kind, genuine people, clapped and cheered. I wasn't a disgrace. I wasn't invisible. I was a cornerstone. And just when I thought my heart couldn't hold any more, the doors at the back of the room creaked open. My father and stepmother stepped inside, looking bewildered, out of place. They saw the plaque. They saw the crowd. They saw me. My stepmother's face crumbled. She tried to approach, her expression shifting from confusion to desperate apology. My father just looked small, like a man who realized too late he had gambled and lost something irreplaceable. Ethan stepped back, giving me the space to choose. I met their eyes, not with anger, not with hatred, but with calm. "I hope you find what you're looking for," I said quietly. "But you won't find it in tearing others down." Then I turned back to the people who were clapping, smiling, celebrating, the people who saw me not as an accessory to flaunt or a failure to shame, but simply me. And for the first time in my life, I didn't look back. Weeks passed, but something inside me had shifted permanently. I was no longer waiting for someone else's approval to feel worthy. The community center thrived under my leadership. Programs for kids, workshops for women starting over, evening classes for the elderly, all the things I had once wished for when I felt invisible. Now, I was building them. Every morning when I unlocked the glass doors, a little crowd of smiles waited for me. Real smiles. Real gratitude. Not the cold, transactional affection I used to chase from my family. One afternoon, as I finished setting up a new library corner, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, expecting a volunteer. It was Ethan. He wore jeans and a casual white button-down today, sleeves rolled up, a soft grin tugging at his lips. "You missed our lunch date," he teased lightly. "I'm sorry," I said, wiping dust off my hands. "I lost track of time." He chuckled and walked over, brushing a stray curl from my forehead like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I'm proud of you," he said, voice quiet. "Not because of what you built, but because you remembered who you are." I smiled, feeling tears sting my eyes. "You saw it first," I whispered. He shook his head.
No.
"I just reminded you." We stood there for a moment, surrounded by shelves of new books and the laughter of kids down the hallway. "There's something else," Ethan said, reaching into his pocket. My heart skipped. Not a ring. Not yet, but a small card. "The board of my company voted last night," he said, handing it to me. "They want you on it. Officially." I stared at the card. My name. My title. Board member. I laughed. A bright, unrestrained laugh that felt like a weight lifting off my chest. "Are you sure?" I asked, half joking. "I've never been more sure of anything," he said, eyes twinkling. "They need someone who knows what real strength looks like." I took the card, holding it carefully, like a fragile promise. At that moment I knew. I wasn't stepping into someone else's world anymore. I was creating my own. That night, as the sun set in blazing gold across the city skyline, I stood on the balcony of my new home. The same stepmother who once called me a disgrace was now nothing but a distant shadow in my story. The laughter that had once mocked me was a fading echo I no longer needed to silence. I didn't need revenge. I had something better. Victory with kindness. And as Ethan joined me on the balcony, slipping his hand into mine, I realized something deeper than success. True wealth was never measured by what you wore or who clapped the loudest. It was measured by who stood beside you when the lights faded, who believed in you when no one was watching, who celebrated you, even when you had nothing to offer but yourself. And tonight, standing under a sky full of stars, I was the richest woman in the world.